What if I told you that thousands of years ago, people were already living better than we imagine? What if the ancient world was not dark, dirty, and primitive, but smart, comfortable, and shockingly advanced? Most of us were taught the same story. Humans slowly moved from stone tools to metal, from caves to cities, from simple life to modern technology. We were told that ancient people struggled just to survive, while real comfort only came in recent centuries. But what if that story is wrong? At the beginning of the 20th century, something strange happened in the deserts of Iraq. Archaeologists began digging near the ruins of ancient Babylon. At first, they expected to find broken walls, old bricks, and maybe a few clay tablets. Nothing special. But what they uncovered changed everything. Beneath the sand were signs of technologies that should not exist at that time. Not according to history books. Not according to modern science. These discoveries didn't just surprise researchers. They scared them. Because if these findings were true, it meant one thing. Ancient civilizations were far more advanced than we ever imagined. For a long time, scientists believed human progress was slow and simple. Stone tools came first, then bronze, then iron, and finally machines. Ancient Greeks and Romans were considered the peak of early development. Everything before them was seen as almost primitive. Whenever strange objects were found in ancient layers, they were often ignored. Scientists said the dates must be wrong, or the objects were accidents, or misunderstandings. But the number of strange discoveries kept growing. Then came a breakthrough in Mesopotamia, near modern-day Baghdad. In 1936, archaeologists found a small clay pot. Inside it was a copper tube and an iron rod. At first glance, it looked meaningless, just another ancient container. But 2 years later, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig made a shocking suggestion. He believed this object was a battery. Yes, a battery, thousands of years old. Later experiments showed that when filled with certain liquids, this device could actually produce electricity. Some researchers believe it was used for simple metal coating, a process similar to modern electroplating. If that's true, it means people in Babylon understood basic electrical principles long before modern science existed. And this was just the beginning. As excavations continued, archaeologists found something even more unbelievable beneath the main palace of Babylon. A carefully planned system of pipes made from fired clay. These pipes were sealed so tightly that water could flow through them under pressure without leaking. This wasn't random. This wasn't primitive. It was plumbing. Modern history tells us that ancient people dumped waste into the streets. That real sewage systems came much later. But Babylon told a different story. A story of clean water, organized cities, and thoughtful design. Which raises a terrifying question. If Babylon already had electricity, plumbing, and advanced engineering, what else did they know that we've completely forgotten? Because the next discovery wasn't under a palace. It was inside a private home, and it proved that ancient people could see the world in ways we never expected. Imagine walking into a house that's more than 2,000 years old and realizing the people who lived there could see better than you. As archaeologists moved away from palaces and temples and into Babylon's living areas, they expected to find simple homes, basic rooms, basic tools, nothing impressive. But inside one large house, believed to belong to a wealthy merchant, they found something that stopped everyone in their tracks. On the floor, under centuries of dust, were strange glass objects. Thin, perfectly clear, smooth, and slightly thicker in the middle. At first, no one understood what they were. Modern textbooks say ancient glass was cloudy and rough, only good enough for beads or cheap decorations. Real lenses, we are told, only appeared in the Middle Ages. But then, something unexpected happened. One archaeologist casually placed one of these glass pieces over a clay tablet covered in tiny writing. And suddenly, the letters became bigger, sharper, easier to read. It was a magnifying lens. That meant someone in ancient Babylon understood optics. They knew how light bends. They knew how to shape glass to make small things visible. This wasn't an accident. This was knowledge. And it changes everything. Because if Babylonian scholars had magnifying lenses, it means they could study fine details, tiny symbols, small cracks, even stars in the night sky. Science didn't begin in the Middle Ages. It was already happening thousands of years earlier. But the surprises didn't stop there. In nearby workshops, archaeologists uncovered metal tools, saws, drills, and cutting devices, not made from soft copper or bronze, but from an alloy that had barely rusted after thousands of years. Official history says ancient people couldn't work with hard metals. It says they shaped stone using sand, water, and endless manual labor. But the stones in Babylon told a different story. The cuts on large stone slabs were deep, smooth, and perfectly straight. These weren't marks made by rubbing sand for months. They looked like the result of fast, rotating tools. One modern stone expert examined them and said something shocking. These marks look like they were made by a machine. That means ancient workers may have used mechanical tools. Simple machines, yes, but machines nonetheless. And then came one of the most mysterious finds of all. Inside a ruined workshop, archaeologists discovered broken bronze gears, interlocking teeth, precise shapes, clearly part of a larger system. Even damaged, the purpose was obvious. This wasn't decoration. This wasn't art. It was a mechanism. Modern books claim complex machines appeared only during the European Renaissance, that ancient people only used levers and pulleys. But these gears told another story. Some researchers believe they were part of a calculating device, possibly used to track time, or the movement of planets. If that's true, then Babylon wasn't just a city of builders and traders. It was a city of engineers, scientists, thinkers. And now the question becomes even more dangerous. If ancient people could build machines, lenses, and advanced tools, what else were they capable of? Because the next discovery didn't involve metal or glass. It involved sound. And what they found underground suggests the Babylonians knew how to control something we still struggle with today. Have you ever whispered something in a room and felt like the room was listening back? That's exactly what archaeologists experienced in Babylon. While digging in the center of the ancient city, the team heard strange stories from local workers. One elderly man, who had helped on the site for years, spoke about a place his grandfather called the House of Silence. According to legend, ancient priests stored the voice of the sky there. Most archaeologists don't believe stories like that, but after a heavy rain, the ground collapsed near the site. Beneath the sand, the edge of a massive stone slab appeared, sealed with a thick layer of natural resin. When the team moved the slab, they discovered a narrow staircase going down into the ground. At the bottom was a small room, and this room was perfect. The walls were smooth. The shape was exact. Along the walls stood tall clay jars, all facing the center of the space. At first, scientists thought they were storage containers for grain or wine. Then someone spoke, just one quiet word, and the sound exploded through the room. Even a whisper became loud, clear, and powerful. The voice bounced off the walls and came back stronger, like it was coming from a modern speaker. The engineers were stunned. This wasn't magic. This was physics. The angles of the walls, the size of the jars, and their exact placement were all carefully calculated. The Babylonians had built an acoustic chamber thousands of years before microphones or speakers existed. In rooms like this, a single person could address a crowd. A judge could speak without shouting. Important meetings could happen where every word was heard clearly. Sound mattered to them. But that wasn't the only thing that shocked the researchers. Next came the mystery of light. Babylon had massive buildings with deep halls and long corridors. Many of them had no windows at all. Historians always assumed people worked there using torches or oil lamps. But there was a problem. The ceilings were clean. No smoke marks, no soot, no black stains. If torches had burned there for years, the stone would have been dark. But it wasn't. Then, in an inner courtyard, archaeologists found something unexpected. Polished bronze mirrors. Not just one or two, but an entire system of them, mounted on movable stands, positioned at precise angles. When researchers tested them, everything made sense. Sunlight from outside could be captured, redirected, and sent deep into the building. From mirror to mirror, hallway to hallway. It was an ancient light system, a way to bring daylight underground without fire. That's why Babylonian buildings stayed clean. That's why their air was fresh. They didn't burn fuel all day. They used the sun itself. And then came another discovery. Inside a normal family home, a stone bathtub. It had two pipes, one bringing water in, one letting it out. Under the floor, there was a small chamber for hot coals. When tested, it worked just like a modern water heater. A Babylonian could come home after a long day and take a hot bath, not a cold splash. A hot bath. This level of comfort wouldn't appear in Europe for another 2,000 years. And it forces us to ask something uncomfortable. If ancient people had sound engineering, solar lighting, and heated water, what else did they quietly master while history wasn't looking? Because the next discoveries weren't about buildings at all. They were about health, cleanliness, and protecting life itself. What if ancient people knew how to protect their health without hospitals, pills, or modern science? That idea sounds impossible, but Babylon keeps proving us wrong. As archaeologists continued digging through ordinary homes, they started noticing something strange in kitchens and storage rooms. In one house, they found a large copper pot. At first, it looked normal, but when they examined it closely, they saw the inside walls were coated with a thin layer of silver. Most historians would call this decoration. But silver isn't just shiny. Silver kills bacteria. Even today, hospitals use silver to keep surfaces clean. And yet here it was, inside a kitchen pot that was thousands of years old. That means Babylonian families were storing water and cooking food in containers that stayed fresh longer and reduced disease. They may not have known the word bacteria, but they clearly understood cause and effect. They knew what worked, and that knowledge appeared again and again. In another home, researchers found sealed ceramic containers. When they opened one, they expected dust or rotten remains. Instead, they found oil, still usable, still preserved after thousands of years. The secret wasn't magic. The ceramic was mixed with special minerals, and the inside was glazed in a way that stopped air and bacteria from entering. Natural resins helped seal the lid tightly. This was food preservation, not random luck, intentional design. Then archaeologists noticed something even more surprising: the floors. In several homes, the floors were not solid stone. They were double-layered. Inside the empty space between the layers, researchers found burnt herbs, charcoal, and air channels. This wasn't trash. It was a heating system. Hot air from a small fire outside the house moved under the floor, warming the room evenly. No smoke inside, no open flames, just warmth rising gently. This is the same principle used in modern underfloor heating. Historians always said ancient people huddled around smoky fires and wrapped themselves in animal skins to survive winter. But Babylonian homes tell a different story. Warm floors, clean air, comfort built into everyday life. And it wasn't only houses. In nearby streets, archaeologists discovered workshops making shoes. Among the remains were sandals with layered soles. Inside them were thin sheets of cork and fine copper wire. This wasn't decoration. It was shock absorption. These shoes reduced stress on the feet and spine, perfect for people walking long distances on stone roads. Modern science calls this orthopedics. Babylonian shoemakers were doing it thousands of years ago. And here's the most important part. These discoveries weren't rare. They weren't only in palaces or homes of kings. They were everywhere. This wasn't luxury for the elite. It was a citywide culture of comfort and smart design. Babylon didn't just build big structures. They designed life. And that raises a dangerous question. If ordinary people in Babylon lived with heating, hygiene, preserved food, and ergonomic tools, how advanced was the entire city really? Because the next discoveries show that Babylon wasn't just comfortable. It was organized, automated, and planned with a level of intelligence that still shocks modern engineers. What if a city from thousands of years ago was smarter than many cities today? Not bigger, not richer, smarter. That's exactly what Babylon begins to look like when archaeologists studied how the entire city worked together. They didn't just find advanced homes. They found systems. Under the streets and along the main roads, researchers uncovered strange brick structures. Inside them ran copper rods, carefully fixed in thick natural resin. At first, no one knew their purpose. Official history says copper was only used for jewelry, tools, or weapons, and it insists that ancient people had no understanding of electricity. But these copper rods were placed too carefully to be random. Some scientists believe they acted as lightning protection. Others think they helped release static electricity from buildings during storms. If that's true, it means the Babylonians understood how dangerous the sky could be and how to protect their city from it. Thousands of years before Benjamin Franklin. But the city's intelligence didn't stop there. In workshop districts, archaeologists found massive stone slabs polished so smoothly they reflected light like mirrors. History books claim such polishing took months of hard manual labor using sand and water. But when scientists examined the surface under a microscope, they saw tiny circular marks left by rotating tools that suggest Babylon had simple machines, early versions of drills or grinders, powered by water, animals, or human force. This changes everything, because it means mechanized labor didn't start in medieval Europe. It started in ancient cities like Babylon. And when machines handle hard work, people gain something priceless. Time to think, time to study, time to create, which explains another discovery. Along Babylon's canals, archaeologists found remains of automated irrigation systems, wooden gears, bronze parts, stone counterweights, floating cork pieces. When water levels rose, gates opened automatically. When levels dropped, they closed. No slaves carrying water all day. No constant human control. The fields watered themselves. This turned Babylon into a green oasis in the middle of a desert. Crops grew. Food was stable. Life was predictable. And where food is stable, culture grows. Art, science, writing. Speaking of writing, In one building, believed to be an archive or early bank, archaeologists found shelves coated with a strange fire-resistant lacquer. Even when tested with flame, the coating darkened but did not burn. Babylonian officials were protecting information from fire. Inside the same building, researchers found metal seals with microscopic patterns impossible to copy by simple casting. Each seal was unique. This was anti-forgery technology, a way to protect contracts, money, and identity. In other words, Babylon had systems for trust, security, and law. And then came one of the most shocking finds of all, a sealed bronze plate. On it was a detailed map of the city. Every street, every canal, every major structure, drawn to near-perfect scale. Academic science says ancient maps were rough guesses, but this map showed precise surveying, advanced measurement, and citywide planning. Babylon wasn't just built, it was designed, which leads to one final, uncomfortable question. If an ancient city could plan, automate, protect, and organize life at this level, why did it all disappear? And what warning does that leave for us today? So now we reach the most uncomfortable question of all. If Babylon was this advanced, if people lived with comfort, smart systems, clean air, heated homes, automation, and scientific thinking, why don't we see this story in our history books? The final discoveries made archaeologists pause and reflect, not just as scientists, but as humans. In one of the last areas excavated, researchers found writing tools unlike anything expected from the ancient world. Among simple clay styluses were hollow pens with metal tips. Inside them was space for ink. These were early fountain pens. That means Babylonian scribes could write continuously without dipping into ink again and again. Information moved faster. Records were easier to keep. Education was more efficient. This wasn't a slow, clumsy society. It was organized and informed. Nearby, archaeologists discovered a network beneath entire neighborhoods. Vertical shafts connected to underground tunnels. At the bottom of these shafts was water. When hot desert air entered the system, it cooled instantly and was pushed into homes through floor vents. This was natural air conditioning. No electricity, no machines, just a deep understanding of air, water, and physics. Even more shocking, inside these ventilation systems were layered filters made from fine copper mesh and palm fibers soaked in natural antiseptics. They were cleaning the air. Modern science says air hygiene is a recent idea, but Babylon proves that ancient people cared deeply about health, comfort, and long-term living. And then there's the truth no one likes to admit. These technologies didn't vanish because they failed. They vanished because civilizations fall. Wars, invasions, fires, floods, lost knowledge, forgotten skills. History is not a straight line upward. It's a cycle, rising, collapsing, starting again. Babylon wasn't a primitive step toward us. It was a peak, a society that learned how to live with nature instead of fighting it. A civilization that used intelligence, not destruction, to create comfort. And maybe that's why its story makes us uncomfortable, because it reminds us of something important. Progress isn't guaranteed. Knowledge can be lost, and being modern doesn't mean being wiser. Babylon whispers a warning from the past. That true advancement is not about faster machines or bigger cities, but about balance, understanding, and respect for the world we live in. The ruins beneath the sand aren't just history. They are a mirror, and the question they leave us with is simple. Are we actually more advanced than the people who came before us? Or have we just forgotten what real progress looks like?